Yes, I'm very impressed with his music, as were his contemporaries. He was hugely famous in his day, hugely. He was as famous as Schumann, who supported him, Mendelssohn, Schubert, obviously, Robert Franz. It reminded everybody of Robert Schumann or Franz Schubert, even Franz Liszt. And the fact of the matter was that it wasn't his real name. His real name was Knaut. He came from a very ordinary working class background of salt workers, and it's quite extraordinary that he was so musically gifted. They do say that Handel, who came from the same town, Halle an der Saale, had parents who were not musically gifted, but it's very unusual for a child to be so prodigiously talented, coming from such an unlikely background. There were a number of questions about what his name was before it was changed. So at that point I realised I needed more help. I had help retyping the songs and locating them, and I needed help with genealogy. At that point I contacted DMJ, Genealogy in Berlin, and asked if they could help me get to the bottom of Franz's name, to find out what really happened. And of course, they were enormous help. We've learned an awful lot. If anything, it's thrown up a few more questions, but why? Why did I need to know this? Why was it important? Because I think names are important. I think how we see ourselves is very important. There is a lot in a name. And so it revealed Franz to me as someone a little unsure of himself, his working class roots. He wanted to be known as an elite composer.
Schneller, möchte von hinnen ziehen. Hinaus in die weiter Freier, in die freier weiter Welt, dort wo der grüne Meier sein schönstes Lager hält.
Round the corner, across the main road, is the Fränkische Stiftungen, which is a very famous and very prestigious school, and it was in his day. And because he was so prodigiously gifted musically, he was able to gain a place there quite easily. He didn't apply himself to his studies, and he readily says that it was because he'd had this music drumming round his head and he couldn't really concentrate on anything else. And it's perfectly easy to believe, judging by his prolific output throughout his life, he must have had a head full of music. He left without his Abitur at 19, but just before he did, a young lad joined the school at 14 called Karl Wilhelm Osterwald, and he was a Musterknabe. He'd had a very, very privileged musical background. His father was a choir master, and it turns out that he actually provided texts for 51 of Franz's 279 settings. Looking into the Osterwald songs, I asked a friend how many recordings there were, and it turned out very few indeed. And so we agreed that we would try and find all 51, and located them all and looked into them and found that they were quite extraordinarily good. It was agreed between me and Ian Snedden, who's edited the songbook, that he would retype them all and form them into a songbook, and that I would do some research and write a monograph and explain Franz's life and the meaning behind these songs, which was very gradually becoming apparent. It was obvious that these songs were full of coded information. There was some close relationship between the poet and the composer. The first thing I noticed was the brown hair. The women all have brown hair, and the curly hair, and the black brown hair. And this is phenomenal. This never happens. They all have the blonde hair of Heine's Lorelei, but not here. And this was my trigger point. I realised these songs were something different. May is repeated almost to the point of parody. Something happened in May, and it doesn't take a genius to work out what that was. Heimliche stille Liebe, the secret silent love, appears in the Osterwald Lied, Mitternacht. It's a song of yearning, of furtive longing. It's extremely erotic, and it's quite obvious that the secret silent love is Osterwald, or maybe Osterwald writing about Franz.
Mitternacht ruht die ganze Erde nun, doch heimlicher stiller Liebe wacht. Wann könnte die Liebe ruhen? Darf sie am liebsten hetzen, nicht weilen, muss sie auf Sturmes Flügeln eilen, kann nicht rasten, muss jagen und fragen, jauchzen und klagen, und sie wandert verstohlen und sacht. Mitternacht.
They stay friends for the rest of their lives, but at this point, 1846, something dramatic happens. They have made a conscious decision, it seems, to make marriages of reason and have children and keep their respectability as it would have been then, and leave their close union, whatever kind of union it was love, I'm sure of that, leave it behind. It's very poignant when you actually listen to the songs, and I've arranged them into 4 seasons, that there's this Trennung, this parting is so clear between them.
Die Schwalbe zieht, der Sommer flieht und alles will sich trennen. Ich weiß nicht mehr, wie mir geschieht und meine Sinne brennen. Verlass mich nicht, wenn alle Freuden eilen, und lass mein zagend Angesicht an deinem Herzen weilen. O ziehe nicht in die kalte Welt, nicht in die Welt der Schlangen, solang ein warmer Arm dich hält, mit sanftem Druck umfangen. Verlass mich nicht und lass mich nicht verderben. Dich sehen ist Leben, Lieb und Licht, und dich verlieren sterben.
The more one listens to this music, the more clear it seems that the intimate alchemy binding these words and music together is potentiated by nothing less than love, however one chooses to understand that word. Irrespective of further biographical considerations, and on musical grounds alone, this symbiotic relationship places the Franz-Osterwald collaboration as one of the most fascinating in the history of the German Lied, and until now, one of the most underestimated. Graham Johnson, July 27th, 2019.